Hey guys, Pen here. As LEGO has become more relevant over the years, especially after the advent of the LEGO movie, there has become a growing realization within the LEGO user base of how incredible and important minifigs have become. They're a staple. Themes like cities certainly don't feel as alive without them, but themes like Star Wars and superheroes would be nothing without the minifigs representing their characters. The characters are the soul of these franchises, and thus, the minifigs follow suit for the theme. Due to this understanding, there has become a serious desire for accuracy with these minifigs, to the point where there are requests for unique printing designs and new part molds on a regular basis from fans of these franchises, and in time, if feasible of course, LEGO does exactly that, or at least tries their best to. One thing is for sure with LEGO, when something works, they tend to stick with it, right? Even to the point of holding on to the mold that makes these pieces in order to use them in the future, some even up to 20 years even, with much needed maintenance, of course. One more important staple of these themes is that they often go back to previous adventures and retell them, with the newer parts available and with new, yet still accurate minifigs. When this happens, LEGO has had quite a good margin in successfully executing this. It would be expected then that if one of their own properties managed that success, what with soulful characters, recognizable vehicles, etc., that such accuracy would be expected of that series too, yes? I feel that Ninjago has reached that level of success on LEGO's markets for sure, and remakes of sets have gone underway in the form of Ninjago Legacy. For more than a year now, Legacy has presented itself as a success with fans, and when it comes to accuracy, the vehicles and locations are no slouch. The original versions these sets were based off of were developed from scratch, whereas these Legacy vehicles are designed off their appearance in the TV show, something that Ninjago has handled very well on all fronts as of recent, compared to back then at least. This of course calls for Legacy minifigs to re-represent these scenes as well, just like Star Wars before it. Except rather than going all in on accuracy, we have minifigs that are inspired by them. Well, barely. I know I'm not the only one who feels this way, but shouldn't a sub-theme that focuses on the legacy of its parent theme also show that in its minifigs as well? When I think of Legacy, well, these minifigs aren't it. Let's take a step back to 2016 and take a look at the Ninja minifigs for Day of the Departed. This was sort of a 5-year anniversary celebration of Ninjago, what with returning villains and concepts, but the Ninja here have suits that are directly based off their Pilot and Rise of the Snake designs, and it shows that a lot of thought went into ensuring that they look that way, specifically. Now, back to Legacy, we have these suits that represent nothing in particular. These designs were used in March of the Oni to give them relevancy, but as there were no sets released for March of the Oni, these minifigs were prominently featured in the Ninjago Legacy sets of 2019. For that fact alone, these designs would be excusable. We jump to 2020, and a few designs have returned from the prior year for Legacy, and I don't mean that in the best way. My expectation was that these minifigs would now start to reflect the concept of being a Legacy sub-theme. And there was an attempt, not with these older suits, but with these newer suits. They still aren't really based off anything specific, as they're more inspired by a combination of the ninjas' suits and rebooted and their tournament geese and tournament of elements. They are both, and yet somehow neither. That's not Legacy either. Add this to the fact that they all retain their designs from the LEGO Ninjago movie. Now, let me be clear, these designs do work with modern Ninjago. They show progression with the characters, and it has been something that has been desperately needed in a LEGO theme, with an overarching story, without too much change. But as Legacy has separated itself now from, and I quote, modern Ninjago, retaining these designs also steer away from the idea of a Legacy sub-theme. Now, I'm a promoter of the newer face designs for the Ninja, as there was a time where we would never get that, but if there are going to be new facial expressions for these modern Ninja, can they not just be used for the Ninjago mainline theme proper instead? Minifigs like the new young Lloyd in Destiny's Bounty having green eyes belittles the story that Legacy is trying to retain with its intentions. That head is good. That head is an excellent design. It could be on any Lloyd, where it makes sense. Now, I'm no expert at this, but I'm pretty sure it would cost the same to print a black-eyed Lloyd head as it would the green-eyed one. Heck, it might even cost more to add the green, I don't know. It wouldn't be something difficult for LEGO to change, outside of the cost of paying someone to design that face print, which they already paid for this new face anyway. It's why I find decisions like this odd. They already have the designs for the original versions of these characters to use as a basis. Do I expect them to just reproduce them? No, of course not. I'd expect them to modernize them while still being obvious as to what suit they're representing. The 2020 suits are a step in the right direction, but they aren't obvious. Now, Avatar Zane from the Prime Empire LEGO sets, that is what I would expect from a Ninjago Legacy minifigure. It is completely inspired off of the original minifigure designs, with a little bit of an extra touch to bring it more into the modern era, went with back printing and then additional details that give it that extra freshness. Though of course I do feel that we should also have legacy designs with the face prints too, not just the suits themselves. The hardest thing to ask though is for the molds that make these suits and characters unique. I understand that some molds are old and retired, though could definitely be brought back. I also know that it is difficult because there are also a limited number each theme is allotted for when it comes to new molds for new pieces, or brand new molds of old pieces. Designers rely on other themes to create parts that will work for both teams, and will allot the parts they need for their theme, and can't get anywhere else, to themselves. So I can't expect a return of Kai's old hair for some time. I don't mind waiting, but I'd love to see them. Especially when you consider that Qui-Gon Jinn's hair in Star Wars has been in production for all 21 years of the theme's existence. It can't be the same exact mold they used to produce them back then, but they would have absolutely formed a fresh one or two. And I'd love to see similar care in how Ninjago is treated in the future. I also have to commend that LEGO is trying its hardest to retain the identities of these main characters for this theme. I cannot say the same at all about the villains of this series, which for some make or break want to get a wave of Ninjago in the first place. Now, the intention here, just like with the ninja, is to embrace the legacy of Ninjago, which is great, but the villains of Ninjago are just as important, and not a single Ninjago legacy set has done them justice. And I don't mean just the minifigures. The complete lack of vehicles is very apparent, and probably suited for a different video than this one. In the meantime, let's talk about minifigs here, and I'm gonna just do this in season order because we can cover them much faster that way. The Skullkin are a mixed bag. I like that the printing allows LEGO to retain the appearance of these characters. Knuckles' mohawk looks quite odd, but I understand why that part was used. The torsos are basically the same, but back in 2011, their sashes retained the elements they represented as direct antagonists of the ninja, and I would love for that to be retained here. I can't expect their shoulder armor to return, as they were quite unique and large back then, and I don't mind these shoulder pads either. Would be cool if the elemental color they had and the shoulder armor was retained with these newer ones, but I digress. Also, why don't they have boots? If LEGO has their boots in Hidden Side, so why can't they still have them either? Now for the Serpentine, they're perfect, don't change them. There could be more styles and tribes featured, but the Venomora we've got fit right at home, and Pythor actually looks regal as he is the Snake King after all. Now, I have a very strange perspective on the Stone Army than others. From the get-go, I've understood that they were inspired by the real-world terracotta armies of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. All of these statues are unique, so when we get variances of the Stone Army scouts, soldiers, and warriors, I don't feel that bad about it. However, General Kozu is specific. He was red. He's not red in Ninjago Legacy, and that completely defeats his character as not only being eye-catching, but him being adorned as the general of the army as well. They did him in red before, and I can't see why he can't now. It's not like red abs can't handle it. I've had the original since it came out. Not a single problem. I would also love to have the Stone Army mouth guard back, but that piece is not a priority. But maybe one day. The Nindroids are also perfect. Hopefully if Cryptor returns, he'll retain his shoulder armor as well. I think the biggest crime of the villain minifigs is the amalgamation that is the Overlord. This may be the most important villain in the franchise outside of Garmadon, and he's being treated as valuable as a side baddie. This dude has two completely unique and very story important forms that I feel should be represented appropriately. The current Legacy Overlord primarily takes its design from the version of him in Rebooted, which is the superior design in my opinion, but him having the Helmet of Darkness and 4 arms completely shifts the mood of the character. I can't expect them to mold a dragon head that can fit a helmet on its head, and there are too few sets that would require the legacy of the Green Ninja version of the Overlord to begin with, so I can understand wanting to imply that version of the Overlord to compensate. But it doesn't fit the idea of a legacy sub-theme. His rebooted helmet is still in production, and the armor used for the Skullkin and Stone Army in gold would certainly suffice at this point to add a bit more accuracy to the character, if not bringing back the old mold for it. But what minifigures do a good job, though? We already established the Serpentine and Nindroids are basically perfect. Lord Garmadon could use some part color tweaks, but there really isn't much needed here. He's practically the same, actually, and I think that's really cool. Same with Wu. Those black robes were very much a thing in the series for a very short time, and it is cool to see him with it, though I would love for Legacy to steer back to his white gi, but certainly not as necessary as other designs for other characters. Little Lloyd also, outside of his face, is basically perfect, but these are just a few in a group of so many minifigs ripe for change. One thing that we do need to consider here when it comes to minifig designs, LEGO works more than a year in advance. When Legacy just came out, they were already underway with designing the 2020 sets. They had no idea whether we would like the Legacy designs or not, because the theme was fresh, and that reflects on how they're presented in 2020. For all we know, they could already be on their way to amend these admittedly nitpicky issues, and if not, I would love to steer them in that direction. That way people won't have to refer to third parties that LEGO doesn't make any money off of to get older minifigs and can be satisfied with the ones that come in the Legacy sets, like Star Wars manages very, very well. I also know that there are other movements within the Ninjago community that have a much larger and wanted impact should they be successful. Something like continuing Ninjago City, developing a Ninjago collectible minifigure series, giving the ninja more varied facial expressions, ensuring the show airs in a timely manner. Most of those require a lot in order to come to fruition, and I feel that accurate Legacy minifigs is something more feasible without distracting from those other wants. I hope that you can understand my intention, and I encourage you, if you feel so compelled, to help in bringing this awareness to the designers for Ninjago Legacy, in hopes that we, together, can truly develop Ninjago Legacy into something it can wholly represent. If you wish to support this idea, then use the hashtag #WeWantAccurateLegacy minifigs wherever you end up that uses hashtags. Be civil about it, but let it be known. And hey, let me know how you feel about Ninjago Legacy's minifigures. Do you have a favorite? Do you prefer one of the changed minifigs over the original? Anyways, I've been Penn. You guys keep everything awesome, and I'll see you next time.